abdominal section. And because most aren't having a proper length of their gluteus maximus and their biceps femoris, which is behind the muscles behind your back of your leg, all becoming very shortened. And so cow's head pose is really important, and learning how to do this exercise to increase the hamstring rather than it typically being very shortened, and it doesn't really let the back have a proper clarity where it is, because it could have remained more the cells there in a depolarized state. And where that is, the muscles are not moving, well, they can't really. And when you go to move or do something like that, sort of some soft tissue injury and tear small can have occurred where this is. So it's typical that there is a very weak abdomen that's in the front, and when you cross over and you come down to the butt, muscles there are pretty weak. And this condition here is what we're talking about in how that impacts your spine, because you've got a 3 pelvic floor diaphragm, which all act as a pump and assist to cause where movement is cerebral spinal fluid to flow up your spine and be proper for the nourishment of things, for your nerve force and everything. And so what happens is that the erector spina muscles, which is causing it to be more upright sort of thing at the back, all become very tight. And what comes to be tight ever more also is the quadriceps and the muscles that are just in the front of the body below the belly, and very tight ellipsosis muscles. So this is sort of a vector. If we could give the vector to people so they could see this, perhaps they could look and see what the vector is we're talking about. We're talking about a very tight vector from the very back, small, the erector spina muscles, and very tight sort of more, and not being able to have much length in the very front of where the legs join with the trunk in the front of the body. And so it really is basic that if somebody can learn how to sit and do a yoga position, which is called cow's head pose, it's really important, because you've got your hamstring, which otherwise is very shortened where this circumstance is, and it always is not letting the muscles of the back go back into a proper normalized state, but only remained more in a depolarized state itself. And where that's so, it has become tired, and when somebody goes to move just a bit, or they'll put a lot of pressure on their vertebrae with weight or something, they can truly create a bit of sore soft tissue tearing and this sort of thing. And so, the biceps femoris, your hamstring muscle, and the quadriceps and these sorts of things, all supposed to be having a proper biomechanical length itself and being equal to itself. And for the most part, because people are sitting, because they've got a lot of head forward and shoes, it's typical that the quadricep is longer than what the biceps femoris is, but behind the back of the leg. And so it's very significant, because that biomechanical imbalance really will always cause a stressor ever more in the tight erector spina, which is the small of the back. And it's really called a imbalanced syndrome or a lower crossed syndrome. What's called a lower crossed syndrome. Let's see. And so most are not really aware that actually what you consume and this sort of thing truly is impacting your spine, and can sometimes, because of an internal, affect the spine as well. And the whole condition, if suddenly cystic fibrosis, can trigger things which is to do with arthritis and this sort of thing. And these are things which can be perfectly seen, to be explained, and otherwise a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, oh my God, I've got some sort of disease, I can't walk, and I don't know what's going on. And these are things which could heal up. Can I really understand what occurred? Where foodstuffs would have been eaten later than it should, and the tummy didn't empty, and then food ended up down where the the pancreas is and this sort of thing, it can create inflammation where that is, and then set all of this off. You see, so dead food, which is really high in phosphate and methionine, is going to make stone, and bean and flesh, which is full of that, really does irritate this and impacts the appendix area. And it triggers all sorts of arthritic types of condition and soft tissue injury of the spine. So we don't think this way, but we should. You've got nerves that come out of your thoracic 10th vertebrae and below it to be the 12. You've got 12 thoracic vertebrae, and then you've got your lumbar vertebrae right down there. So down at the bottom of the thoracic vertebrae, you've got T10, and this is very key because it's sort of innervating to the appendix and below, and where any secondary condition was of inflammation from the things that it was eaten and it didn't empty out or couldn't proper full of bean and rice or something in flesh, it can have impacted the capacity of the food stuff to ever move. And so then the energy through the connective tissue travels more through the superior mesenteric sort of plexus where this is. And so the entire sort of spinal cord where T10 is at that level, you've got a level where the umbilicus is, and which really, this is really an early and vague condition where pain could be, and then also felt sometimes if you press in on the appendix a bit, and it's felt where the umbilical area could be, where before that could have localized more to a lower or right abdomen, let's say, where the pancreas is, and impacted the spine maybe more on the right side than the left. And so intestinal inflammation causes pain, and it's a T10 vertebrae where this is. It's sort of phenomena that's called referred to where pain could be or discomfort, where the nerve pathway where it would have shed an organ. This is what we're talking about, coming through into the abdomen, and then running out of the spine. You've got pain or discomfort where things was, and conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, which never is thought of as could be a condition that causes such, it is. And that's what this show just is a little bit about to remind everybody. So intestinal inflammation, Luke, is really a cause of quite a bit of back conditions, and T10 vertebrae certain, and the phenomena really refer to where that pain is, and the nerve pathways all share energetics with the organ, internal and innervate where these things are, and so the spine could have caused a pain sensation felt where the back is, and conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, you see, is really a major cause of and a condition that impacts this. So where dead food consumption could have been, of course, you've got an inflammatory arthritic kind of a condition ongoing that grows. An irritable bowel disorder sort of really is a triggeredness where inflammation is, and that can put that more throughout the body, including the joints and spine. And back pain could be flaring up because you wouldn't even have an idea that what you ate and it didn't empty out the stomach, and it took a long time, end up breaking down into trans fatty acids and fatty acid and a glycerol molecule, and go through the secondary pathway to get some energy from that. But in the time of it, there's a lot of sediment, a lot of debris, doesn't get digested properly, and just up further down, lower down, and sort of like as a rope worm, which it isn't a worm, it's actually like a laminated material which can sometimes be sloughed out. I mean, these are things which cause pain where the back is, and spine, and things that could have flared some. And it really is because there's a conjunctive condition of digestive issue, you see. We don't think this way where we haven't. We should, because now you're going to be able to understand things a little more. So it's primary that you don't, there's often a digestive disorder, and that can impact the lower back. So irritable bowel syndrome, flare-ups, really can cause somebody to have involuntary tense sorts of sensations in the core muscles, leading to sort of a soreness and things where this is. And you have to rest and really find a way to be able to rest through it, because it can be sort of very difficult where a spine could have pressure and a little subluxation of it. It really can be pressure on a nerve and these sorts of things. So Lower spine and spine vertebrae, which is not properly in alignment, can cause some dull aching and sensations and things. If it's at the top of the atlas, my God, it's going to cause, the autonomic nervous system to be sort of not dysregulated. And so a system of systematic inflammation where non-ecological life colloid is, you've got an imbalance of life colloid in the gut, and it triggers all that systematic inflammation. And the food substance was just dead that caused all of that. How about focusing more on learning about what life food is? So it affects the joint and your health and everything, which if you do life food, it's going to really be improving all of this. Quite incredible. You could learn more about life food. And so lumbar degenerative spondylolisthesis and inflammation where the intestine is, all of it is related. So a high protein, high complex carb, and full of fat meal really defines a meal which is going to trigger, somatostatin wrongfully, cause the pancreas to be shut down, not let you have proper glucagon. And so how are you going to manage that to not be turned to fat if you don't have a glucon like a protein, which, people could be using as Zempia, but then those are things which it is a glucon like protein, which can impact and stop somebody from just turning something into adipose tissue. And so it could be made use of, some of those fuels and things like this, but it's really a secondary pathway and shouldn't be really eating the food stuff like that. Be learning a bit more about life food so that you're really not, raising somatostatin with everything that you do. So soft tissue, nobody's talking about it, but you should. Why? Because that's where soft tissue injury can occur, and interspinous sort of ligament, which lies more between the spinous process and really could have become torn a little, especially where conditions involve repetitive sort of stress and trauma. So the increase in your force where things are in a posterior spinous structure could have damaged and could have occurred small soft tissue, like I said, and so cause somebody to be bedridden for a little while that heals up. And this is really what's happened. So not for somebody to be thinking, oh my God, I can't walk, I'm not sure what's going on. And so the leading condition where this is really a ligament fibrillated tear, and potential sort of for that to have caused some discomfort and instability. And yet it could have got triggered by some bad habits like what we're just saying, you see, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, you've got that condition. And so where it is that someone could have a bit more stiffness or soreness where the T10 nerve exits the spine, it's really between the 10th and 11th thoracic vertebrae. You can hear a bell going off. How good is that? It's the vertebrae which branches into the anterior and posterior rama and lumbar, and all of these are connected internally. And so what's operating all of those where the nerve is very much impacted by the lumbar region, and the cells not having the sort of ability to be able to be remained in their normal state, but be only in a very depolarized state. And food stuff like what we were just talking about, which you'd have to listen to our work a little more, which would have raised somatostatin, it's going to cause glucagon not to be present. And so then after that, the cells really don't have ATP and this sort of thing, and the body doesn't have as much capacity to be able to raise blood sugar. And blood sugar can remain low, and so there you go, voila, you've got your back muscles and things like that remaining in a depolarized state and not having salt an element necessary to be able to help manage and clear this up, like the cramp and things. So where challenge could have suddenly just been, and it really, somebody gets a bit of diarrhea and what have you, their core temperature could have dropped, so that happened. And so then, the life colloid release, heat shock protein and this sort of thing to cause a fever and that. And so where chills are and this sort of thing, you can see lumbar 4, lumbar 5 spinal segments and things where stress could have been, and herniation, some, and soft tissue injury, tear, and stone ever build up in the tissue and things just like that, where the tissue is really understanding and looking at this a bit better. You could notice that the microscopic soft tissue injury really, like the myosin actin filament, weren't able to slide past each other. That was very stiff. When you went to move, all of a sudden it couldn't. And God help us, you got a bit of soft tissue tear where that is. And it could be sudden, and what have you. It can have happened because something was sudden, something was a bit more repetitive stress on the lower back, and where some slight condition is, somebody eats, they get inflammation, they get pain and stiffness where the muscles and a spasm, and then sitting and those sorts of things could really cause a changedness to the pressure and things. And so there could be a huge, like I said, massive difference between the quads, which could have a certain length, and the bicep, which could have much a shortened length. And so it's always going to have caused stress on these lumbar region of the back, and can be corrected because you're doing cat-head pose and learn how to do this. So sitting where you shortened your hamstring, which everybody would do, and the biceps femoris sort of does, and so it always can create some sort of posterior sort of pelvic tilt. Sometimes if somebody's pushed the stomach out and rounded their back, or sucked the stomach in and lifted yourself up with more a bit of an arch in your back, which is a more proper way to be able to sit. So how relaxed your shoulders are, and tummy, and how much your breast is relaxed, these things all relate to how flexion and extensor muscles can work properly and be even where they work, and for compensatedness where the lower back is. You've got rounds successively where a lumbar flexion could be, and achieving some more desired range of motion. And by degree where you do some yoga and things like this, cat-head pose, which is so important, I reckon that what we would do is to wrap things up where this is. So what we've just talked about is that the inner abdomen and what's going on where food is and things impacts certainly the spine. It can cause tight erector spina and tight iliopsoas muscles in the front. It can cause very weak abdomen and a weak glutes and things. And so this is this crossed vector that we're talking about. And have you ever thought about this? So all I'm just saying here is, wow, how amazing it is. Go ahead and look up cat-head pose and learn how to do this. Add this in a couple of times a day or something, and it's really going to improve everything for you. So incredible that you'll be really thanking your lucky stars that you were able to have listened into this to get a bit of an insight into the whole picture. Yeah. All right. So that's a bit of a wrap up, mate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jubb. I was definitely suspicious about that having be correlated, the appendix area or the ileum, and then like
Yes.
the pressure going, I think, goes all the way up to, like you were saying, the thoracic spine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it can actually can travel deep, and because through the connective tissue, it can have impacted stomach and gastrointestinal sorts of conditions where somebody really comes down with something, and even a flu and all these sorts of things. People could call this, and it's sort of like then they can't walk for a while. But really, to just be explained, yeah, this is what this is. That's all. It's going to be able to heal up if you do the right thing. Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hope we had a good recording today, mate. Got a new mic.
Oh, the best ever.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, mate. It was the mic. Yeah, so I got a new mic, so hopefully it's going to make your job better. But I was searching to think, God, could it be the mic? Could it be the mic? I tested and stuff, and people said it could be, so I went and got a new one, and I think it's going to make a big difference. Yeah. All right, mate. Anyway, anything comes up, give me a call back today as it is, or anything, yeah, or
Thank you.
text. Well, let's see how we go where this show is, mate. Love you, mate.
Great. Love you, man.
Love you, mate. Come on.